All right, Shira, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you're doing well.
I am.
I wanted to just kick it off. We can get into your childhood, how you grew up, the things you were exposed to, and then we can talk a little bit more about where you are at today.
For sure. Okay, so my name is Shira. I am a junior studying psychology and minoring in dance on the pre-med track.
I didn't know you were minoring in dance.
I am.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And I'm from Evanston, Illinois. I am the youngest of 4 kids, and I would say I'm a pretty stereotypical youngest child. I have an oldest sister named Rachel, a brother named Yoni, and another sister named Aviva, and then my parents, Amet and Arica. And yeah, I grew up in Evanston my whole life, but I was born in White Plains, New York, and then moved here early.
Gotcha. Very cool. All right, so there's so much I want to get into with you, but why don't we just start off with this dance minor, honestly. So I know that you're super into dance. I know you're in graffiti here.
Yeah.
I would really love to just hear about how that passion kind of got started for you.
Yeah, for sure. So I was thinking about this honestly because I think most people are most interested in the dance in pre-med. But yeah, so I started dance when I was 3. I think it was just something my parents put me into. My 2 older sisters also danced.
Okay.
And until I was around 8, I was just kind of doing it for fun. And mind you, like, my family is so not athletic. We just weren't really good at anything else. And honestly, I wasn't good at dance until I was older. But so it was just something to do. My parents were really big on having us have some kind of extracurricular to do. And when I was 8, I joined my studio's like more intense company. So at that point, I was probably dancing more than like kids my age who were taking just a couple of classes. Yeah. And even then, I wasn't good. And I remember like not loving it because it's hard when you're a young kid. You're dancing with like 10 other girls, and you see your teacher favoriting certain kids, and it just is like, it's discouraging. You're not getting the attention that you're putting based on the amount of effort you're putting in. And then when I was around 10 and doing it, I felt like I was starting to get more recognition from my teachers. And then it turned into something much more than just dance. So aside from like getting better at technique and talent wise, like I felt like dance was the one community where I felt validated in as a person. And it just helped me become confident in myself so much more than just being a dancer. And then throughout high school, like I felt like my dance communities were places where I could bring a lot of creativity outside again from movement, like creating social bonds and making the atmosphere a place that people would want to be in, and getting close with the other dancers and with my teachers, and yeah, just helping me grow as a person. So yeah.
Did you do competitions when you were a kid?
I did, but I really hated them.
Okay.
They weren't...
I want to know what that's like.
Yeah. Okay. So my studio, I wouldn't say that this North Shore area is like the best in terms of dancing. And my studio wasn't a competition studio, but they wanted us to go to competitions. So they would bring the older girls to competitions like 3 times a year. And one of them that we went to were with these studios that were just so much better than us. And so it was a very stressful week. Yeah, you're taking classes with these girls who have been dancing competition style their entire lives. And that was definitely really overwhelming for me, especially when I started.
What does that entail though? Like competition style? Like I can imagine it's about, you're dancing with a group, you put together a certain choreography, you have like a set area where you dance to a song or something like that. Yeah. Am I really far off on that?
No, you do. So like there's conventions too. So aside from like you have we went in January, you had from like the start of your season, so September to January, to make all these routines, like 3-minute routines. You have solos, small groups, large groups, and you compete those over the weekend. But then you also have an entire weekend from like 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. of just classes over and over again with like celebrity choreographers. And you wear a number and you like have to pick up their choreography in 2 seconds. And yeah, so that was overwhelming because like I think that we as dancers, you're automatically good at picking things up pretty quickly in terms of movement.
Sure,
but then I was completely out of my element with these girls who were just insane.
I could see that.
Yeah.
So now that you're in like a dance club here, I am assuming that when you were doing competitions through a studio, you might not have been like the forefront of putting together the choreography. Am I right?
Yeah, right.
So at this point, being in a club, you get to really dictate like how you want to spend your time, what you want to make, how you want to perform.
Yeah.
I'd love to know for you, what do you like really enjoy about it? And is there something that's different about being in a club that you get something that's different than coming just like dancing with the studio? Like, do you enjoy that choreographing aspect to whatever extent you do that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, so in addition to dancing at a studio in high school, I was also part of ETHS's dance company, and that was more structured to how like Graffiti or Tonic is. Where look, we had a teacher as our advisor, and they were really in charge of doing everything, like making our shows. But we still had the same structure of doing student choreography and then an executive board. So like I had exposure to choreographing through them, and then being on their like committee for planning different events. But I didn't have as much power as I did on Graffiti's executive board, because we're completely running it now versus having like an actual teacher setting up our shows and stuff.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so that's just like in terms of differences. I love being on Graffiti, and I loved being in the high school dance company. I think that there's something really special about having like 20 people really dedicated to spending their own time and effort in putting on a show that isn't like you get out of it what you put into it. It's fully up to us to make a show that looks good, and people really spend a lot of effort and take it very seriously. And I feel like the people on Graffiti are just so talented that it's like you're constantly surrounded by people who are inspiring and great and creative. Like everyone has a different style, everyone's come from a different background, so it's different than being even in high school and in my studio, just because like I was familiar with everyone's styles and background for dance.
Awesome. So I looked into your background a little bit. I read about your work at ETHS and doing dance there, and I know that you were involved beyond just with the dance group at your high school, that you were like a camp counselor as well, and in both cases you were dealing with people with special needs. And I know that it seemed like the camp obviously wasn't dance specific, but this the program that you were working with was dance specific. I would love to know just like how you got involved with that, what you got out of that. It also really stuck out to me the fact that you mentioned like you get in what you put in, basically,
right?
Because I can really imagine for something like a graffiti dance group, being able to get like really great relationships with these people, just because it's about like you have to be similarly minded to like want to do that with your time. Right. I know that's two kind of questions in there, but I really do want to know what your experience was like in both of these programs, the camp counselor, ETHS.
Yeah. Okay. So ETHS, they had a best buddies program, which was separate from the dance day. And I was involved with that, but it was like very low stakes and you didn't have to commit much to that. But then I got introduced to their DLP program, which is their program for students with special needs, through their physical education class. So junior and senior year, I was like an interactive peer leader for their gym class. So that's how I got introduced to those group of kids. And then just so happened the teacher for that PE class was the director of the dance company. And this dance company had this program called Dynamite Dancers that I think has existed for like 20 years, because my oldest sister is 8 years older and it was still there when she was there. But so they every year starting in January, our show's in March, in December or January, all of the kids who volunteer from that program with special needs, they come and we teach them choreography and technique, and then they perform it at our show. And so I was like the leader of that program my senior year. And that year we actually participated in the pep rally, which was they performed that dance in the pep rally and people just like went insane.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And normally like not very many people would come to our show because like no one really cares that much about dance, but we were so happy that they were able to perform in the pep rally because everyone's there.
That's perfect. Yeah. That's super cool.
Yeah, so that was always great. I always loved doing that in high school. I don't do it as much in college just because like I don't think there's as much of an opportunity to do it. But yeah, it was something that was really important to me in high school. And then the camp counselor, that was I always going to be a camp counselor. That was like through the camp that I attended.
I did the same thing.
Yeah.
I went to a camp for a few years. I was a camp counselor. Was it a sleepaway camp?
Well, when I worked with the camper with special needs, it was the day camp, but then I was a camp counselor for the sleepaway camp. Yeah. So I don't even remember how that was set up. I think they knew that I did a lot of work with students with special needs, and I happened to actually know my camper, and then I just did it for like a month because I needed a job. And yeah, it was great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I do want to know about like your experience as a camp counselor. So you were a camp counselor at the sleepaway camp, right?
Yes.
Did you like live in a cabin with kids?
Yes.
How old were they?
I had kids that were 8, and then I had kids that were 9, and then kids that were 11.
What did you think about that experience? Like, how did you handle it?
I loved it.
Really?
I did. I think that I am like a very person. I'm very silly, and I like totally capitalize on having that opportunity to be like silly all the time.
That's sweet.
I really loved it. I did a lot of ridiculous things with my campers, and I like got it because I was there when I was younger too. I originally went to camp that summer thinking I was gonna stay for 5 days, and then ended up staying for 8 weeks. I just like somehow got myself a more long-term job. Yeah,
I did it for one summer, like living with the kids, and they were like 7, and it like I like dealing with kids a lot. I liked working with them. I got a lot out of it for sure, but it was so tiring.
Yeah.
It's like mentally exhausting.
Yeah, it definitely is. Luckily they had like a structure, so they would go to class and do things, and I would get a break. Definitely a lot of energy and a lot of screaming all the time. I just kind of like screamed back at them and then acted like that when I was fine. Yeah.
I wanted to get into academics as well with
okay.
you. I think, so you're pre-med.
I am.
I love hearing about pre-med 'cause it's something that, one of those things that for me that I immediately eliminated as a possibility for myself for a number of reasons. But I think it's a really aspirational thing. And I think that, you know, people, especially when you've gotten to a point where where you're so deep into it, I think it's really impressive. And I really love just to hear about, you know, what motivates a person to decide to spend their academic experience pursuing that, and then beyond that continue to go to school. So I'd love to know, like, what were the motivating factors for you? It sounds like your family's very ingrained in healthcare, but I would love to know, like, personally for you, how did you end up there?
Yeah. Okay. So I told you before, my dad's an OBGYN and my mom's a radiation oncologist. My brother's in med school, and then my 2 sisters are going into midwifery. So all healthcare. And then besides that, I have a lot of extended family members who are in healthcare, doctors. Honestly, like, I always knew I wanted to be a doctor, so I can't really speak on the aspect of like
when you
pressure.
say always, though, what does that mean?
Like, I don't remember ever thinking I was going to do anything else.
Really?
And the immediate question people have is like, how much of that had to do with your family pressuring you, which I'm sure was a lot. I come from a Jewish family. I remember growing up, my grandpa said, you have one of 3, like, you can do anything you want as long as it's one of 3 professions, a doctor, a lawyer, or a rabbi. So there definitely was family pressure. I just never felt it because I feel like I always wanted to be a doctor. When I was younger, I think what appealed to me, like, I really liked the way that my parents worked all the time. I liked growing up with a mom who worked all the time and knew that my personality was one that would thrive in a work setting, that I didn't ever want to give up my ability to work. And then the cliche answer that is like my longing to help people, which I've thought about. I think that I do have the personality. Like, I feel like I'm very compassionate and considerate and empathetic. And there's this whole aspect of healthcare where you're helping people through your technical skills and education. I'm helping people with their medical issues. But then I think that I personally can like add on to a personal relationship and help people by being empathetic in my like one-on-one care.
I could totally see that. And it comes off. And I think that's something another thing that's really interesting to me about pre-med is it seems to me like you make a decision to go down a certain path, which with you know, obviously whether your parents are already in the industry or, you know, you have some level of exposure to what it's like, it is still, you know, kind of an intimidating thing to be like, oh, I want to do this. Because obviously there's many different areas of it, but there's a lot of aspects of it that I feel like you don't know how you're going to deal with them until you're really in that situation.
Right. And I still don't.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, it seems like I mentioned I had another pre-med person, a friend of mine named John, on here, and he did this program through Northwestern where, I don't know if you've done this before, but he basically like shadowed doctors at like North Shore, that kind of thing. And he got exposure to some of these things that we're talking about where it's like, you don't know how you're going to handle it. And I think the bedside manner thing is the most interesting one, because there's really, really heavy, important situations that you have to just be able to deal with interpersonally that are just really complex, and something that you don't take a test and like learn how to do that kind of thing.
And I think that's especially important for a field like medicine, where you have to be very like, intellectually and academically strong, which sometimes correlates with not having like the best social or like interpersonal skills. So I think that's something that appeals to me. Like I really look forward to having the opportunity to work with patients and offer something that isn't just like me fulfilling a routine, a medical routine. But in terms of like scariness or like my ability to commit to medicine, I remember when going to college, I was deciding my main two choices between colleges were Northwestern and Michigan. And my mom had seen my oldest sister go to WashU and like kind of initially be pre-med and then just like struggle with it. And so she really didn't want me to go to Northwestern because she thought that it would be completely cutthroat and like way too hard. Honestly, I haven't thought being pre-med at Northwestern has been totally cutthroat in terms of like people interacting with each other. Classes are definitely hard. But
you take like chem through that, right?
Yeah, you take chem, orgo, physics, and bio. Yeah, bad. Orgo was actually the death of me. I did so poorly. It just was a terrible year, but you have to get through it. Yeah.
I do want to talk more about academics with you and classes. Yeah. I know you're a psychology major.
I am.
I would love to know, you know, they can be pre-med classes, but I would love to know like the classes that at this point, you know, you finished 3 years here. What are the things that really stand out to you? And were there any classes that kind of surprised you that you're like, wow, I really got a lot out of that?
Yeah, so definitely none of my pre-med classes. I don't think I enjoy those at all. My favorite class I've taken at Northwestern was this relationship science class that I took in the fall. Is
this a psych class?
Yeah, it's a psych class.
Is it relationship psychology or something like
relationship science, but yes.
Okay.
They may have changed, like they switched the name, I think.
I just recorded another podcast with a dual major that's also in psychology, Abdallah, and I want to say he was talking about this class as well. Okay. But go ahead.
Yeah. So, well, it's why I'm doing the research I'm doing at Northwestern.
Okay.
The class was just totally cool. It was about really like romantic relationships. And I was just fascinated by every topic.
It sounds really interesting.
Yeah. So and I found myself like really applying material that we learned in class to outside life. Yeah. We learned most specifically like attachment styles, learning about people being anxious or secure or avoidant. And then I was like finding myself looking at my friends and being like, this is why your relationship hasn't worked out, because you're avoidant, or, you know, like stuff like that. So that class was great. And then now I'm doing research for that professor.
I'd love to hear about the specific research, but this does sound so interesting.
Yes.
I'm a cognitive science major.
Okay.
So I can take for my major, I can take like psychology classes. I'm definitely gonna think about taking this class. It sounds so interesting.
Yeah, and you learn about a bunch of stuff. Like you learn about like how sex contributes to relationships and polyamory and just everything. And it's a new field also that doesn't have a ton of research. So it was a great class, and he presents it in a great way too. He uses a bunch of videos from TV shows to exemplify his points.
That's awesome. When I think about, you know, just thinking about this idea and like studying it, there's so many things as I've gotten older that I realize about life, that there's just like some things that are just highly complicated. Things that, you know, you're born, you gain these like basic knowledge, you learn how to deal with life in the world, and you get better at it. And once you're like done with like your brain developing most of the way, you start to realize, okay, so this is how people like evaluate the world. They have like this amount of like brain, right? And relationships is one of these things that I think about as just being like so complicated. And even just like I think about conversation as another one of these things. It's like it's like something that we do. Everybody gets into relationships. Everybody basically has conversations, but these things are so nuanced and it's impossible to get like master it. Maybe it's something that's very interesting to me, but I would love to hear about the specific research that you're doing.
Yeah. I am working in, so the professor has a lab. It's called Relationships and Motivation Lab. I've only been doing it for a quarter, and I was working this past quarter on coding videos. So I had like a sheet with a bunch of questions, and I just rated the couples.
Yeah.
So they were answering questions about changes in their relationship and how that's affected their sense of authentic self. And yeah, so like how it's taken away or added to their life, how positive they feel about those changes. And
it must have been so interesting watching those.
Yeah, for sure. And there was apparently, I wish I was on this study. There was a like part, I don't know if it was part of the same study or a different one, that they had couples talk about conflicts that they have. And I feel like that would have been really interesting to watch.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. So I'm hoping to continue working for that lab. I don't know exactly what I'll be working on next because I finished all the videos, but so we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Another thing that I want to talk to you about, something that I've found to be a really interesting question to ask people at this point in time where we're coming out of COVID. I'd love to know about how the pandemic has affected your life, and maybe more specifically, how it's affected your future plans, if at all, and maybe if there's been silver linings that's come out of it for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously on like a grand scheme of things, COVID wasn't great, but I feel like for my personal life, I actually had a lot of blessings come out of COVID that wouldn't have happened otherwise. In terms of my academic or my plans for the future, I don't know if it's affected much. I was always planning on taking a gap year, so I don't think that I'm delayed in any sense. But yeah, well, I loved being at home for a year, or what, 5, however long we were home.
Long time.
Yeah, long time. And my sister was home too, so it was just extra time that I got with my family that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. The main blessing was my house that I live in now. All of my friends were supposed to live in our sorority houses.
Oh, yeah.
And then there was like a 24-hour period where everything went to shit, and they were just like, no one's gonna live in this house anymore. And so we were searching for something to do. Like, we didn't know who we were gonna live with because realistically we thought apartments and we'd all have to split up. And then one of my roommates' mom has a friend in real estate, and I guess international people were supposed to live in my current house, and then they couldn't come back.
Yeah.
So before the house even went on the market, we signed the lease, and it just worked out so well. So now I live with 7 other girls, and very campy vibes, like very wholesome. We do a lot of fun things together.
So lovely.
Yeah.
Do you have a backyard?
We do. It's super nice.
Do graffiti practice there sometimes,
yes.
right?
Yeah, right.
That's so nice that you have that.
We call the house the farm because we have every animal inside that house, including squirrels in our walls. Yeah, so.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I think our landlord used to keep bees there. Like, we have a chicken coop in our backyard.
No way.
And beehives.
Are there chickens?
No.
It's just there. It's just a coop.
Yeah. Well, she used to have them.
Do you have any interest in like having chickens? No?
I don't think so.
I want that so badly. I love it. I something I've been thinking about a lot. I was making this summer. I started doing like sourdough again. I did it over COVID, like everybody else, and it's something very satisfying to me about like making your own food. And that's one. Like, I eat a lot of eggs, so I would love to do that. Weird tangent. But.
Yeah. I can't. I don't think I would. I think I'm kind of scared of chickens or
really
farm animals.
Have you had pets throughout your life?
I have a sweet dog named Banjo.
I like that
13.
name.
Yeah, it's a very good name. I've been bragging about it. We didn't come up with it, so I feel like it's okay to brag about it. Yeah, we had a dog right before him named Winston, and he unfortunately was run over by a car and died. So we got banjo. But it's another blessing because now I'm obsessed with banjo.
It's terrible.
It's terrible. It was a traumatic experience.
What do you want to do for your gap year?
I have no idea.
You just know that you want to take a year to live your life, see things, do things?
Yeah, well, I would definitely get a job. The way med school works is like you take the MCAT and then you apply to med school a full year in advance. So if I wanted to go straight after college, I'd have to apply right now.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of people that are doing it right now.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That makes sense. You're just trying to spread it out a little bit. Give
Yeah.
yourself a break.
Yeah,
Chill
right,
out.
Yeah. So there are a few opportunities I think I could do. I could be a medical assistant. I thought about maybe doing EMT training.
Oh, cool. That would be intense.
Yeah. And you don't get paid very much, but we'll see. I'm very open and I have a while to decide. So
Yeah, you do.
we'll see.
I would love to hear about some of the influences that you've had in your life. And I'd love to hear about movies and TV shows that are important to you, that you love, and even like dance. Like what are if you think back about like your love of dance, what are the things that like really drew you in?
I feel like the main thing was just like having an environment where I felt validated in.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for like a young kid. And I said this before, but like all my siblings, we just weren't good at anything else. I mean, there was academics, we were smart kids, but we just weren't. and I felt like I was just finally appreciated in that environment. And that just pushed me to get better because I was like building these relationships with my teachers who were paying attention to me. And then once it was just a cycle of like them validating me, and I was like, okay, maybe we should put a lot more effort into like getting better as a dancer. And so that's what mostly.
That's the key motivation for you for dance.
Yeah, but I mean that sounds like shallow, but I didn't.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of, especially when we think, so I have a lot of people down here to talk about like how they got to the point that they are at, right? And we talk about childhood, and there is a lot to be said about the reason people stick to things is you get validation. Like it's really hard to know if you're doing the right thing for the rest of your life when you're like 8, you know? And if somebody is like, oh, you're doing a great job, you're good at this, that means something. Like the opinions of adults when you're a child mean something, and it should because they have perspective,
Yeah, right. So that was part of it. And then I just think that I don't know, I felt more confident in that field. And then, so in terms of like early motivators, I was very close with my family. And then I think I really focused in on like myself as being very independent and kind of not saying like I was saying that I was a stereotypical last child because I feel like I often got what I wanted, but not in like a way where I was snobby and demanded what I wanted, but I just like sought after what I wanted. And yeah, so
I want to dig into this idea of independence. I would love to know what you really mean by that, and if you have any tangible examples of it, because I think that that's like a quality that I really look up to in a lot of people, is like this mentality to try and have a desire to be self-sufficient. It seems like from my experience that it's something that is really helpful to people. If you have that decision early, like, oh, I want to be like a competent person on my own. So when you say that, what do you mean? And are there examples in your life that you can point to?
Yeah, for sure. Especially during childhood. Well, okay. So I was the fourth kid. And by that point, I think my parents adapted the hands-off approach, otherwise known as neglect. And so I was just like, I had to find my own way to have fun and do things for myself. Examples that my family liked to tell: when I was 4 years old, we would celebrate like Passover, Thanksgiving with my family, extended family. And I'd been gone probably for 30 minutes. No one knows where I am. And then some woman takes me, finds me and carries me back to my family. It's like, I just saw this girl climbing up and down the elevators for the past 30 minutes by herself. I was 4 years old. And just things like that. Like I always liked exploring. I would get myself into trouble sometimes, like wandering around our neighborhood and sometimes going into strangers' houses and my parents not knowing where I was. And, you know, luckily it worked out well I think I turned out pretty fine and there was little damage done. But yeah, I've always been really independent in terms of like figuring out what I want to do and doing it. I don't really rely on other people to get things done that I want done. I just normally think that the easiest way to get something done is for me to just do it, which is sometimes like controlling and whatever, perfectionist maybe, but yeah.
I understand that. I'd love to know, can you think about like movies, TV, music that you really love that you think is like influential into becoming who you've become?
Yes, I my friends are gonna laugh because it's so typical of me. Like, this is the only thing I ever talk about, but Harry Potter
Got it.
was just, yeah, I'm a big Harry Potter person. I've posted, when I was younger, for school, I would make these book reports for Harry Potter. Like, I did the 4th and 7th book, and I did a one-woman show of me reenacting all of the parts. Yeah, it's on my Instagram. Yeah, I love that book. And I had such a great experience reading it. My dad would read it to all of us, and he did all of the accents reading it. So it was just like a very wholesome and meaningful time of my life reading those books. But yeah, that book I think changed me forever. I think it's the greatest book of all time.
That's bold. I saw the first movie and I never read any of the books or anything.
Yeah.
I'm missing out.
I have a theory that all of my relationships have not worked out because the other person hasn't read Harry Potter. Damn. I think it's a deal breaker for me in terms of marriage. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. So that was the biggest thing for me.
That's very wholesome. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Is there music that you can point to as well?
Not like as a kid, I don't think. I'm really into rom-coms in terms of movies. And I always have been. But I don't know if I really thought of like...
What are the best rom-coms? I can think of... Oh, what have I seen that I loved? There is one... Is Her a rom-com?
Is that the movie about the
robot?
I haven't seen that one.
I thought it was funny.
I don't think that's a rom-com.
What do you like though? What are the movies?
My favorite romantic comedies. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days is my favorite movie. She's the Man. It's good. Have you seen any of these? No.
Classics though.
Yeah.
How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days is something that I've heard a million times about.
It's a great movie. It's with Matthew McConaughey and Kate Hudson. Great movie.
I'll give it a watch.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you now that I have my upcoming 5 and Dime role.
Oh, yes. Okay.
I was so excited to see that you'd worked there before.
Yes.
I'd love to know about like work experiences throughout your life. What was the first job that you ever had, and what did you learn for those jobs?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think. I think my first official job was when I was I did babysitting when I was younger, but I think my first official job was when I was the day camp counselor for the kid with special needs. And then I worked so my senior summer going into college, freshman year, like that was when most of my camp friends were going to camp to be counselors. And I wanted to stay home in Evanston for the summer because I'd been going to camp up until junior year of high school. So I hadn't really been home. And so I got this job at Taco Diablo, 5 and Dime. I was a host there. It was a great experience. It was a lot of fun. Was intense, I feel like, a little bit. That's what
it seems like. It's a pretty like go kind of place,
especially when you're working at 5 and Dime during the summer because it's like insane. And then it got to the point where everyone left for college in August and I was there until mid-September, so I was working like every day, double shift. It was a lot, but that was a fun place to work. I think in terms of like motivation, I just wanted something to do, and I thought be a good way to make money. Like, I don't know what else I would have done in high school to keep my time. Yeah.
I understand that. I did my first job. I was a host as well in my town. I gotta say, I think that I'm curious to what your opinion is about this. I thought that it was a really like, I think it changed who I am. I think that this like experience of like operating a phone and like having to like just be nice to people and like just constantly kind of, you're like the face of a restaurant to some extent. You're taking people to tables. It was really an interesting way to like understand people. I thought, you have you know, like you said, you worked so many shifts, especially when everybody had left for college, right? And you have these experiences where it's just like some weird ass problem with weird ass people that you have to deal with, but your job is to accommodate and be like okay dealing with that kind of thing. I thought that I'm really glad it's something that I do. I'll say that. I think that you know, working in a restaurant is its own thing, but really specifically like as a host, there's something to be said about like how it's like changed how I interact with people without a doubt.
I haven't even thought about that. Yeah, I think working with people in general is like always important for that, because you're always going to run into people who are being complete assholes or being unreasonable, and you just have to be professional. And that's a good skill to have.
Absolutely.
And also, honestly, like I think most of my conflicts working there were with other people that worked there, less so customers. Just because like things would get out of hand and get really crazy, and like you're struggling to get people to listen to you. And yeah, so it was kind of a mess sometimes, but good experience overall.
You mentioned that you were kind of between Northwestern and Michigan when you were looking to schools. We talked about how you grew up in the area. I'd love to know what your opinion of Chicago is, and as you kind of look forward to moving on with your life, if there are places that you have in mind that you would love to live.
Well, okay, so I have spent my entire life in Evanston, so hopefully I'll be able to get out. It's not that I really want to get out, and I haven't experienced Chicago. I haven't spent very much time there. And part of why like Northwestern felt like a new place is because I feel like I'm relatively directionally challenged anyways. So I don't know much about Chicago, honestly. And I would love to live there, but I think it probably would be important for me to go to a new place without my parents living very close. Yeah. So and with med school, it's kind of difficult because you kind of just have to go where you get in.
Exactly.
But ideally, maybe New York, I would go after college. I have a weird obsession with San Diego, but
cool.
I haven't been there.
Have you been? I've never been to California at all.
Okay. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, so, you know, you mentioned this, like, you don't have that, you are limited in terms of your control with like going to med schools, right? Yeah. I really love seeing like for like Feinberg, you see like people get paired right to their hospitals doing what they're doing. It seems like such a cool like experience. I don't know, you go through these years of going to school and working really hard, and everybody seemed to be like moving on to such exciting places to do such exciting things. I'd love to know, you know, when you think about your next steps with this process of pre-med, if there are specific areas that you find yourself gravitating towards,
like geographically or
like in terms of like practice.
Yeah. Okay. So another question I feel like I get a lot.
I'm sure.
I don't know, and I feel like they kind of tell you not to know because that's the point of med school. Because if you go into med school interview and you're like, yeah, I know that I want to be a pediatrician, and they're like, you don't really know anything about being a pediatrician. You sound like a know-it-all.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So I actually don't know what field I would want to go into. I know more so what I feel like I don't want to go into.
It seems like you're just destined to work with people, right? That's all I'm getting.
Yeah, I want patient interaction for sure. Some like young when I was young, what I wanted to do was a pediatric oncologist. That would be terribly devastating, I feel like, though. So we'll see. And then I'm doing this urology research this summer, so we'll see if that's a field I like. I don't know exactly what my research for this summer is. My ideal was to be more in the sexual dysfunction category of urology, but I think I'm probably going to do more like prostate health research. So maybe that's a field. I don't know.
I'd love to know about, I've never worked in a lab here. I think it's like a super important part of, for many people, like why they're attracted to this school. There's so many opportunities to do that kind of thing. We touched on like what you do, you know, watching interviews and coding them, you know, basically just saying exactly like, you know, the specific things that there are said about the relationship, right? Just like classifying the conversation. I'm sure that you have friends that are worked in other labs. I'd love to know like your perspective on Northwestern as a research like university as a whole. Like, do you find that the opportunity to do that is super important? Are you really glad to have had that, or do you find it's like one of the less important things about Northwestern to you?
It's definitely not important to me. I think that because Northwestern is such an advanced research school that they push it on students a little bit. So
I definitely do.
Yeah,
the number of classes I've taken where somebody comes in and is like, do research, motherfucker.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's like people feel a lot of pressure to do it, especially pre-med kids, because you have to do it in order to get into med school. But honestly, I think it's like not so easy to get. You have to like kind of figure it out on your own a little bit. It's not as intuitive as I thought it would be.
That's interesting. What do you mean?
Like finding a lab to work in, I felt like, first of all, I feel like I only got into the lab that I'm currently in because I was in the professor's class.
Yeah, you did it through a relationship.
Right. So, and I emailed him at the end of the quarter. I said I was interested. But over the summer, I had been like researching all of these labs to potentially get involved in. And it was kind of like an overwhelming process. So it's not important to my Northwestern experience that much, but definitely really great that they have all those opportunities for students.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
So kind of moving on, thinking about like the future, dance has been something that's been super important to your life. I would love to know, is it something that you can have any intention of like continuing to do? And have you thought about like how you would do that in the future?
Yeah. I don't know, because I don't know how I would continue doing it. There was a brief period in time in high school where I thought I would major in dance and potentially pursue it professionally. I just like at this point, for sure, I don't even think in high school either I was like technically good enough to pursue it professionally. So I don't know in what capacity I could do it, but I'm sure that if I have my own kids, like I'll totally be involved. I'll totally be a dance mom. But yeah, that's definitely something that's really sad because I've been doing it forever. And so I don't know what it's going to be like to not be in those communities anymore.
What is dance like? Because you do the minor, right? Mm-hmm. What are the classes like?
Yeah, the dance program at Northwestern is not very intense compared to other schools. So I do, for that, you have to take like 4 non-dance curriculum classes, which are like learning about dance in history. I just took like an arts expressive movement class where we learned about like dance as therapy. And then
what?
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, it was a cool class.
Maybe that's what it'll end up being. You know, you'll be like a dance doctor.
yeah, maybe. Yeah, what do they call the athlete? Something, I don't know. Yeah, that would be. I think that would also be pretty depressing though, like working with all of these injured ballerinas. Yeah, and then you take some movement classes as well, like modern.
Got it.
Cultural class.
How has the community been like in like that program here? Because that's something that sticks out to me about like the college experience. Mm-hmm. It's really important. Who like not only does like deciding what you want to study dictate like what you learn and how you spend your time, but it dictates like the community that you're surrounded with.
Yeah.
So what has that been like? Is it different than the graffiti group? Is it different kind of people? And is there a big overlap? I'm curious. Like, are people like all these dance group members, do they study dance a lot of times or no?
I wouldn't say that they study dance. Okay, so disclaimer, I started the minor sophomore year fall. So I only got fall and winter in person, and then all of my classes since have been virtual. I would say there's a lot of MT kids in my classes. So not people who are like dancers first. And then there are some people from graffiti or tonic who like take classes just for fun, and then a few majors and minors.
Is tonic another group that you're in? Are you in too?
I am in too.
How?
It just works out that way. Actually, freshman and sophomore years, normally I have rehearsal on Sundays from 3 to 10 p.m. and then small group rehearsals. Tonic's tap.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's something that for some reason I've always been like super fascinated by. I don't know why. Tap dancing, just like, I don't know. I think that's super cool.
They're super cool.
It's like, honestly, the thing that's most interesting to me about it is just, it's like, I guess the way to put this would be that it's like, it limits the way the kind of motions that you can
Right.
do, but it adds like a completely different layer on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
Had you done tap when you were in high school and stuff, or did you
Yeah.
pick it up now?
No,
You had?
no. Yeah, I did it from like I think that was my first class, and I stopped maybe when I was like a junior in high school. Once my sister graduated, but then came back to it in college. I mean, the thing with tap is like most people don't love it, even dancers, just because it's like it can get repetitive, I guess, and like you said, it's limited in terms
Yeah.
of your movement. They are so cool. Like they are insanely good. I'm nowhere near as good as the other people in Tonic. They do all these like hip hop dances and very non-Broadway style, which is like what people
Yeah,
typically
totally.
think of with tap. Yeah, they're so cool.
That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yes.
I would love to know. So beyond graffiti and dance, I think it's really interesting to have people down here to talk about like the communities that they've found at the school. Are there any other like groups that you're involved with, or any like niches of people that have developed that you've found like really solid community in here?
I would say my main involvement is with dance, with graffiti and Tonic, and then I'm also in DM. But my closest friends, I feel like I met them in Bob, honestly,
Really?
like where I lived.
Were you freshman year? You were in Bob. What floor were you on?
I was on 4.
Very cool.
Were you in Bob?
I wasn't. I was in Ayers.
Okay.
What did you rank? Did you put? I did like Lincoln, Bob, McCullough,
Yeah.
freaking like. I just did North Campus area.
Right.
They put me
exactly.
in Ayers.
Okay.
which
Yeah, I
is
think I
fun.
did probably Lincoln, Bob, McCullough as my top 3
Where did you live sophomore year?
in the Kappa house.
Oh right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was in Lincoln my sophomore year. Best experience of my life.
Did you have a single? No, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you
yeah.
did?
There was like a suite, right? Like 4 singles. Yeah.
In Lincoln?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't even know they did that.
Yeah, it was fucking amazing. I applied because obviously like here like it's a lottery based on the
Right,
number
yeah.
you get assigned. I lived with a junior my sophomore year, right? So he had priority over every single sophomore. So we were in like the 6th floor. We had like the lake view. We could see the lighthouse. It was unbelievable.
And you chose to live with them,
Yeah,
the junior? Yeah.
it was unbelievable. I loved it so much.
Yeah. So I liked my freshman year living situation. Sophomore year I liked it, but I'm just so happy that I don't live in a sorority house anymore. I think that I just like having the control over what I do all the time, and living with like I liked the people in my sorority, but I wasn't like super close with them, versus now I feel like I love everyone I'm living with and feel really comfortable with all of them.
That's great.
So it just really adds to my experience living there.
It's not something that I was planning on getting into, but it's something that I'm pretty interested in.
Uh-huh.
The Greek life here is like changing, right?
Yeah.
You can see how a lot of things are kind of folding. I'd love to hear like your perspective on like what you think about what's happening right now, and how like so many sororities and fraternities seem like they're like done basically.
Well, I deactivated from my sorority.
Basically all of Kappa did.
Right. Yeah. And I think they rushed.
They did. I saw like the Instagram where
Yeah.
people were like DMing some of you.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
I don't know who's in it still. I think maybe some of the sophomores are still in it. I had a pretty fine experience being in that sorority. Like I think it probably was really useful for my freshman and early sophomore year, in terms of my social life, just the types of like social experiences I was looking for.
I mean, it introduces you to people.
Yeah.
It's also something very interesting to me about like the rushing process, even like the difference between how it goes for sororities and fraternities, this like sitting down and introducing, like you have like little interviews. I gotta say, even though obviously seeing the process, there's something that's very harsh about it. There's definitely problems with the Greek life system.
Yeah.
There is something to me appealing about how sororities do it, like actually sitting down.
Interesting.
I think that because I'm not in a fraternity, but obviously I was surrounded by that experience and I was in it to some degree. And I think it's really dumb the way that it's just like up to you to show up to a fraternity. Like I really would much rather they were like, all right, Ben, you meet with this dude this day. You know what I'm saying? Like
there has to be some kind of mix, because it was brutal going through it and then having to do it to sophomore or freshman. It was terrible. I mean, I remember like I would get cut from houses. I'm like, you don't know anything about me, and you weren't even concentrated in our conversation. But it's hard not to take it personally when you have girls saying like, no, for no reason. So yeah, I think it's totally flawed. And my opinions about Greek life in general, yeah, I think it was a good experience for me, like based on what it was at the time. I don't think I would join Greek life now if I was a freshman, just because like the experience of Greek life has changed and the opinion about Greek life has changed. And I think that those are valid opinions. I think there's a reason that it's been called out. Yeah. I mean, if I was at another school, would I do it again? Maybe, probably. Just, I don't know.
I understand.
Yeah.
For me, I gotta say, at the end of the day, I wish it was for more noble reasons, but the big reason I didn't want to do it is just I did not want to put myself in a position where I could be rejected.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? There's just something so fucked up about that I just didn't want to put myself through. But I don't know. I gotta say, I'm very interested to see how it continues to develop after we're here. I think that, a lot of points that have been brought up that are extremely valid. I'm really interested just how across the country, like Greek life is treated and where we go from here.
Right. I also wonder that. I wonder if Northwestern, if it'll come back in a few years, because all the fraternities seem like they're rushing normal classes, and people in our year are still in those, like all of our friends are still in them, which I was surprised by because all of my girlfriends just have left.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
It's interesting. We'll see. Before we wrap this up, I want to get into your family a little bit more.
Okay.
I've heard a lot about them. They sound so interesting to me, honestly. But how are they doing right now? How is kind of life for your family? Where are they at? What are they working on? We heard about the med school. We heard about where they want to head. But, just as of right now, today, how's your family doing?
They're good. My parents, both of my parents have recently taken up other career paths they still work as physicians, but they are interested in doing other things. So my dad is actually a writer. He published a novel a few years ago.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
What's it called?
It's called The Education of Dr. Montefiore.
Is it like fiction?
It's fiction, but a lot of it is based on his experience.
Yeah. That's so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah. So he's always been really creative into acting and writing. So he is transitioning now into a new position in his fields where he's going to he's switching so that he doesn't have his gyne office hours as much. So now he's like mostly doing OB deliveries. Yep. And then my mom, I think she stopped doing it, but my mom for the past few years has created this CBD skincare.
No way.
Yeah, it's very cool. She had a product for that. The idea was that having physicians create this product for like radiation burns.
Okay, yeah.
But she was like super into it in terms of like helping with wrinkles and acne, and she created a CBD lubricant. Like she just went all out with the CBD stuff.
Your parents sound so interesting.
Yeah,
is your dad like writing another book by any chance?
I think he is, and I think that's part of like his transition to the new job. He's interested in having more hours to write. But I don't know details about his new novel.
That's wonderful. I'm gonna get it. I swear to God. I'm really glad I asked, because that's such an interesting little nuance.
Yeah, and my brother actually did stand up in college. Yeah.
Oh my God.
He just discovered it like his senior year of high school, and then did it throughout college. Loved it.
That's awesome. Beautiful. Yeah. All right. We are just about out of time, but I wanted to thank you for coming and doing this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. I do, before we wrap up, Banjo's the dog's name, right? Banjo's doing well?
Banjo is doing well. He just got 2 ACL repairs.
Intense. So
now he's back on his feet, walking. I get him back on Sunday, and I'm so excited to see him.
What a sweetheart. Oh, my God. All right, well... if you want to just like say where people can follow you at, but otherwise, thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm not very big on social media. I don't have like a presence.
I figured I'd give you the opportunity.
Thank you.
Seriously though, it does mean a lot to have you here. I really enjoyed having you, so I hope you have a good rest of your summer, and I really appreciate you doing it.
Thank you. You too.